The alien classroom buzzed with anticipation, a symphony of soft hums from glowing extraterrestrial devices mingling with the low, varied murmurs of students. Among the vibrant array of scales, fur, and translucent forms, Rian's plain, unadorned appearance was striking. His unassuming stature and simple human clothes contrasted sharply with the alien elegance around him, yet it was his steady, piercing gaze that marked him as unmistakably different. The air carried an almost electric charge, tinged with the faint metallic scent of alien alloys and the subtle, floral undertones of some exotic atmosphere regulator. They were a diverse group, with a shimmering creature whose scales reflected light like liquid mercury, a fur-covered being with intricate patterns resembling a starry night sky, and an insectoid alien whose translucent chitin revealed a glowing network of veins underneath. Among them sat one distinctly out-of-place figure, a human, lean and unassuming, but with eyes that gleamed with intelligence and mischief. This was Rian Tate, Earth's first exchange student to the Intergalactic Academy of Advanced Disciplines, a title he wore like a badge and a burden. The moment he entered the class, the room's murmurs ceased. Rian was used to this, being the human anomaly in a sea of alien intellects. Yet, it came with a strange mix of pride and unease, a pride born from the knowledge that he was representing his entire species, but unease from the constant pressure to prove that humans deserved their place among the stars. It wasn't just the stares, it was the weight of unspoken expectations, the fear that any misstep would confirm doubts about humanity's capabilities. He'd grown accustomed to the stares, the curiosity, and even the skepticism, but there was always a small, gnawing part of him that questioned whether he truly belonged. Each glance felt like a reminder of Earth's precarious place in the galaxy, and of his responsibility to prove humanity's worth. Still, it didn't make the stares any less intense. Professor Catrax, a towering figure with luminous, shifting patterns across their translucent skin, floated to the center of the room. They addressed the class in the universal tongue, their voice a soothing yet commanding melody. Today, we discuss the psychological impacts of environmental extremes on sentient life, Catrax announced, their gaze sweeping across the room with deliberate intensity before landing on Rian. Their glowing eyes lingered on him, a mix of curiosity and unspoken challenge, as though weighing the resilience of the so-called Deathworlder against their own expectations. And who better to begin than our esteemed Earth representative, whose homeworld is classified as a Category 4 Deathworld? A collective ripple of curiosity and disbelief spread through the room. Deathworld. The term was used to categorize planets where life persisted against extreme odds. To most of these students, raised on temperate, stable worlds, Earth was a myth wrapped in hyperbole. Rian stood, adjusting his jacket with a grin that was part charm, part deflection. "Sure thing, Professor," he said, stepping forward. "But just a heads up, Earth isn't just a death world. It's a crucible where the environment itself tests your every move, pushing you to adapt, innovate, and endure in ways you can't imagine. You want to know how we survive? Let me tell you about the time I outwitted a pack of feral dogs in a city, without weapons." The room's collective attention snapped into focus. Rian began his tale, weaving words with the finesse of someone who'd learned the power of storytelling. He described an Earth city, vast and chaotic, where humans had adapted not only to the natural world but also to the urban jungles they'd built. He painted a vivid picture of rusting skyscrapers, smog-choked skies, and a labyrinth of alleys teeming with unseen dangers. "I was 15, Rian said, pacing slightly. "Not much more than a kid, but in my neighborhood, you learned fast or you didn't make it. One night, I was walking home after dark. Big mistake. That's when I heard them, a pack of stray dogs, hungry and desperate. Several students shifted uncomfortably, their antennae twitching or fur rippling in subtle waves, while others glanced away, their luminous eyes dimming as if to shield themselves from the intensity of the tale. Even without the universal translator, the raw emotion in Rian's voice was clear. He described the growls, the glint of eyes in the dark, and the way his heartbeat had thundered in his ears. They cornered me in an alley, he continued. 5 of them, all muscle and teeth. Running wasn't an option, they'd chase me down. Fighting was suicide, I had no weapon. So, I did the one thing they didn't expect." He paused, letting the suspense build. "I dropped to all fours and growled right back. The class erupted in murmurs, some incredulous, others impressed. Professor K-Trax's shifting patterns brightened, indicating heightened interest. You see, Rian explained, animals, even predators, have a pecking order. They're wired to assess threats. By mimicking their aggression, I threw them off. For a moment, they hesitated. That's all I needed to grab a loose pipe from the ground and start banging it against the walls, making as much noise as possible. Humans, we're loud. And unpredictable. The story ended with Rian describing his escape, the dogs scattering, and the mix of triumph and terror that had coursed through him. He returned to his seat amidst a wave of questions and astonished whispers. The aliens' reactions ranged from admiration to disbelief, but one thing was clear, Rian had their attention. As the class continued, Rian noticed one student in particular watching him closely. Threx, a sleek, feline-like alien with sharp eyes and an air of quiet intensity. After the session, Threx approached Rian, their tail swishing thoughtfully. "Your stories are fascinating," Threx said, their voice a low purr. "But I wonder, are they true? Or are you embellishing for dramatic effect?" Rian smirked. "A good story always has a little flair. But yeah, it's true." "Why? Thinking of taking a trip to Earth?" Threx tilted their head, studying him. "Not particularly. But I'd like to understand your perspective better. Perhaps you'd indulge me over a sparring match? I hear humans are adaptable." The challenge was clear, and Rian's grin widened. "You're on." Their match took place in the Academy's combat simulation room, a state-of-the-art facility capable of replicating various terrains and conditions. As they stepped onto the training field, a crowd of students gathered, curious to see how Earth's representative would fare against one of the Academy's top martial artists. The simulation began, and the environment shifted to mimic a dense, alien jungle. Threx moved with fluid grace, their strikes precise and almost poetic. Rian, in contrast, was all scrappy unpredictability. He ducked, rolled, and used the environment to his advantage, grabbing vines and kicking up dirt to create distractions. "You fight like your stories," Threx remarked mid-battle, dodging a swing. "Chaotic, yet effective." "That's humans for you," Rian replied, narrowly avoiding a swipe. "We're survivors." The match ended in a draw, both combatants breathing heavily but grinning. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Rian felt a genuine connection to his peers. Later that night, as Rian walked back to his quarters, he found himself reflecting on the day, his thoughts lingering on the moment he growled back at the dogs and the way Threx had called his fighting style chaotic yet effective. That phrase stuck with him, not just as a compliment but as a reminder of why he was here. He couldn't afford to be predictable or conventional, not in a place where the standards of brilliance often felt unattainable. Yet, it was Earth's chaos, its relentless unpredictability, that had always been his strength. It made him wonder, could he find a way to use that same chaotic energy to thrive at the Academy? It struck him that Earth's harsh lessons, its unpredictable dangers and relentless challenges, had shaped him into someone who could adapt to any situation, even in a galaxy filled with the unimaginable. The Academy was unlike anything he'd ever known, a melting pot of cultures and ideas. Yet, he realized that his Earth experiences, the very things that made him different, were also his greatest strengths. Here, in this alien world, he was carving out a place for himself, one story and one challenge at a time. The next morning, the Academy's corridors hummed with a subdued energy as students moved toward their respective classes. Rian's match with Threx had become the talk of the campus overnight. Students whispered about his uncanny ability to turn chaotic situations to his advantage. In the dining hall, one avian student leaned toward another, whispering, "Did you see how he outmaneuvered Threx? It's like chaos fuels him." A reptilian peer hissed in agreement, his unpredictable, a real wild card. "Can you imagine what he'd do in an actual combat scenario?" Others speculated whether his scrappy determination was an inherent Deathworlder trait or unique to him, fueling both admiration and cautious wariness. Whispers of the Earthling's unpredictable tactics and unyielding determination had spread like wildfire, cementing his reputation as more than just a novelty. Still, Rian couldn't shake the feeling that curiosity about him was laced with skepticism. Today's lesson was in Applied Multispecies Collaboration, a fancy title for teamwork training that, in Rianne's view, boiled down to seeing which groups fell apart the fastest. The classroom, a vast circular arena, shimmered with an otherworldly glow from intricate holographic projectors that floated like orbs in mid-air, shifting gently as if buoyed by invisible currents. They emitted a faint, rhythmic hum that seemed to harmonize with the soft mechanical whirs of the modular platforms below, creating an immersive, almost hypnotic atmosphere. The modular platforms, sleek and metallic, constantly reconfigured themselves with soft mechanical whirs, ready to simulate any challenge. The air carried a faint charge, tingling against the skin, as if the room itself was alive with anticipation. As students filed in, Professor Vyr, a stern and battle-scarred Acranus with a voice like grinding stones, stood waiting. Today, Vyr began, you will be divided into teams to solve a simulated survival scenario. Cooperation is paramount. Failure to collaborate will result in consequences. Their mandibles clicked ominously, though Rianne suspected the consequences were more educational than punitive. Rianne was grouped with Threx and two others, Crixer, a towering insectoid with a seemingly endless supply of patience, and Lyris, a small, avian-like being whose sharp intellect was matched only by her sharp tongue. The task was simple in theory: navigate a simulated alien landscape, recover an extraction beacon, and return it to a designated point, all while avoiding environmental hazards and simulated predators. As the simulation began, the arena shifted, transforming into a dense, swampy jungle. The air grew humid, and the faint buzz of simulated insects filled their ears. Rianne adjusted quickly, his earth-honed instincts kicking in as he scanned the surroundings. The others, however, seemed less at ease. Watch your footing, Rianne warned as Lyris' taloned feet nearly slipped on the slick terrain, her wings flaring out instinctively for balance as she let out an undignified squawk. She regained her composure quickly, shooting a glare at Rianne as if the terrain's treachery were somehow his fault. This place isn't going to play nice. I don't need advice from a Deathworlder, Lyris snapped, her feathers bristling. Let's focus on finding the beacon. Threx stepped between them, their calm demeanor diffusing the tension. Lyris, Rianne's experience might actually be useful here. Let's not dismiss his input just yet. Rianne smirked but said nothing, focusing instead on their surroundings. The group pressed on, their path weaving through tangled roots and knee-deep pools of murky water. Rianne's sharp eyes caught subtle movements in the foliage, telltale signs of the simulation's predators. Hold up, he said, raising a hand. The group froze. There's something ahead. Could be an ambush. Crixer clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. What do you suggest? Rianne crouched, picking up a handful of wet leaves and mud. We'll use the environment. Threx, can you climb that tree and scout ahead? Crixer, help me set up a distraction. Lyris, be ready to move when I give the signal. Threx nodded and scaled the nearest tree with feline agility, vanishing into the canopy. Meanwhile, Rianne and Crixer worked quickly, arranging a crude decoy using vines and a reflective piece of Crixer's armor. Lyris watched skeptically but stayed in position. Moments later, a pack of simulated predators, sleek, quadrupedal creatures with glowing eyes, emerged from the underbrush, their movements unnervingly silent as they stalked forward with fluid, predatory grace. Their glowing eyes flickered like embers, and the soft rustle of foliage was the only sound marking their advance, creating an atmosphere thick with tension. Rianne signaled, and the group slipped past unnoticed. Threx rejoined them shortly after, reporting the location of the beacon. It's across a clearing, Threx said. But there's a problem. The clearing is exposed, and there are more predators nearby. Lyris' feathers fluffed in irritation, her sharp beak clicking softly as she tilted her head with exaggerated impatience. So what now, genius? She asked, her tone dripping with skepticism. Any more Deathworld tricks up your sleeve, or are we improvising again? Rianne ignored the jab, his mind racing. We'll need a distraction again, but this time it has to be bigger. Crixer, can you create a noise with your exoskeleton? Something loud enough to draw them away? Crixer nodded, his mandibles clicking. Easily. With a plan in place, the group moved quickly. Crixer emitted a loud, rhythmic clatter that echoed through the jungle, drawing the predators away from the clearing. Rian and Threx darted across the open ground, reaching the beacon. They worked together to unanchor it, their movements synchronized despite the tension. "Hurry up!" Lyris hissed from the edge of the clearing, her eyes darting nervously. Just as Rian and Threx secured the beacon, the simulated predators returned, faster and more aggressive than before. Rian's heart pounded as he and Threx sprinted back toward the group, the beacon clutched tightly in his hands. "This way!" Rian shouted, leading them toward a narrow path he'd spotted earlier. The group followed, their movements frantic as the predators closed in. The path led to a dense thicket of vines, and Rian slashed at them with a sharp piece of debris, clearing the way. The group burst through the thicket and into a small, defensible clearing. The humid air clung to Rian's skin as his chest heaved, the acrid scent of trampled vegetation filling his lungs. He glanced at the others, their faces tense and streaked with dirt. In that moment, the weight of leadership pressed down on him like never before. "We make our stand here," he said, gripping his makeshift weapon tighter, his voice steadier than he felt, as the distant rustling of predators grew louder. The predators emerged seconds later, their glowing eyes locked onto the group. Rian grabbed a makeshift weapon, his instincts sharp. The others followed suit, using whatever they could find. The ensuing fight was chaotic and brutal, with Rian darting forward to jab at one predator with a sharpened branch while Crixer used his massive forelimbs to knock another away. Threx leapt onto a high vantage point, launching precise projectiles to keep the attackers at bay, while Lyris swooped down repeatedly, clawing at vulnerable spots with sharp talons. Despite the chaos, their movements began to synchronize, each member instinctively covering for the others, turning the tide of the battle. In the end, the predators retreated, their programming recognizing the group's resilience. Rian and the others stood amidst the simulated carnage, battered but victorious. As the simulation ended and the jungle faded away, Professor Viwayakal's voice boomed through the arena. "Impressive," they said. "You demonstrated resourcefulness and adaptability. However, your teamwork needs improvement. Survival is not just about individual skill, it is about unity." The group exchanged glances, their earlier tension replaced by a newfound respect. Lyris nodded at Rian, a grudging acknowledgement. "Maybe Deathworlders do have their uses," she said. Rian grinned. "Glad you're finally coming around." As they left the arena, Rian couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he wasn't just the anomaly, he was part of a team. The realization warmed him, a quiet triumph over the loneliness that had shadowed him since stepping into this alien world. They had relied on him, and he had relied on them. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and for Rian, it felt like the beginning of something that might just make this strange place feel like home. And that, he realized, was its own kind of victory. The Academy's grand arena hummed with an electric energy, its massive dome glittering under a canopy of artificial stars. Today's exercise wasn't just another simulation, it was the Intergalactic Combat Trials, an event that drew the entire student body and even a few dignitaries from beyond the Academy's walls. Among the observers were towering officials from the Galactic Union, their glittering robes reflecting the artificial starlight, and military representatives whose stern gazes hinted at the weight they placed on the participants' performances. One official leaned toward another, their brows furrowed in a whispered exchange, while a military officer's fingers tapped rhythmically against their armrest, their intense focus never wavering from the arena. The dignitaries' every gesture radiated a mix of expectation and scrutiny, magnifying the pressure on the competitors. The dignitaries' hushed conversations and occasional nods of approval underscored the stakes of the event. Rian stood at the edge of the staging area, his hands clenched into fists as he gazed at the competitors assembling in the central arena. "Don't overthink it," Threx's calm voice cut through Rian's focus. The feline-like alien stood beside him, their tails swishing with barely contained excitement. "This is just another challenge. Use what you've got, and don't let them get in your head." Rian smirked, glancing at his teammate. "Easy for you to say. You've done this before. I'm the rookie Deathworlder everyone's betting will crash and burn." Threx's sharp eyes glinted with amusement. "Then prove them wrong." The trials were structured as a series of escalating challenges designed to test participants' combat skills, strategy, and adaptability. In a prior year, one team had faced a scenario where they had to outmaneuver a relentless swarm of autonomous drones while simultaneously navigating an unstable, collapsing platform, a trial that left even the strongest competitors shaken and barely victorious. Compared to that ordeal, the current trial seemed equally daunting, with its blend of unpredictable terrain and adaptive adversaries pushing every participant to their limits. Such grueling tests had cemented the trial's reputation as the Academy's most demanding event. Teams would face off in simulated environments against increasingly difficult adversaries, both mechanical and organic. For Rian and his team, this meant navigating a gauntlet of traps, holographic enemies, and unpredictable terrain. As the first round began, the arena transformed into a sprawling desert landscape. The air shimmered with heat, pressing down like an invisible weight on their skin, while the ground beneath their feet crunched with simulated sand, releasing faint, dry puffs of dust. In the distance, the faint, erratic hum of approaching drones added a layer of tension, their mechanical whine rising and falling like a predator's growl. Rian's team consisted of Threx, Crixer, and Lyris, each carrying the weight of their unique strengths and the tension that had begun to knit them together in previous exercises. "Stay sharp," Rian said, scanning the horizon. "This place isn't going to play fair." His eyes lingered on the wavering heat rising from the ground, and he couldn't shake the thought of how this simulation mirrored Earth's harsh deserts, unforgiving, unpredictable, and designed to break the unprepared. The faint hum of drones in the distance sent a chill up his spine, but he pushed the apprehension aside, focusing on the task ahead. The first challenge was a swarm of small, agile drones that darted through the air, firing stun bolts. Rian ducked as a bolt sizzled past his ear, the acrid smell of burnt air stinging his nose. Lyris, aerial support. Threx, cover the flank. Crixer, you're with me. The team sprang into action. Lyris took to the sky, her sharp talons slicing through drones with precision. Threx's agility allowed them to outmaneuver the swarm, striking down drones with calculated swipes. Meanwhile, Rian and Crixer worked in tandem, using debris to shield themselves as they picked off the remaining drones. "Not bad," Lyris admitted grudgingly as the last drone fell. "But this is just the warm-up." The desert dissolved, replaced by a dense, foggy forest. The team moved cautiously, the thick mist muffling their movements and making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Suddenly, the ground beneath Rian's feet gave way, and he tumbled into a hidden pit. He landed hard, the impact jarring but not debilitating. "Rian." Threx's voice echoed faintly above. "I'm fine," Rian called back, assessing his surroundings. The pit was deep, with walls too slick to climb. But what concerned him more was the low growl emanating from the shadows. A simulated predator, larger and more menacing than the ones in previous trials, emerged. Its glowing eyes locked onto Rian, and he felt his heart hammer in his chest. Rian tightened his grip on the makeshift weapon he'd fashioned earlier, a jagged piece of scrap metal bound to a sturdy stick with frayed strips of his torn uniform, crude but effective. "All right, big guy," he muttered, "let's see what you've got." The predator lunged, its claws raking through the air. Rian dodged, rolling to the side and using the limited space to his advantage. He struck out with his weapon, landing a blow to its side. The creature roared, retaliating with a swipe that narrowly missed Rian's leg. Above, Threx and the others worked to lower a vine into the pit. "Rian, grab on," Threx shouted. "Little busy down here." Rian yelled back, narrowly avoiding another strike. The fight was relentless, but Rian's instincts kicked in. He dodged low as the predator lunged, using its momentum to sidestep and strike a calculated blow to its exposed flank. When the creature reared back, snarling, Rian crouched, feinting left before pivoting sharply to deliver a forceful jab to its underside. Each move was a blend of precision and desperation, his every muscle attuned to the predator's shifting weight and razor-sharp claws. The limited space forced him to stay agile, exploiting the tight quarters to outmaneuver his larger foe. He feinted to the left before delivering a decisive strike to the predator's head, stunning it long enough for him to grab the vine and climb out with the team's help. "You all right?" Crixer asked, his mandibles clicking with concern. Rian nodded, catching his breath. "Yeah. Let's keep moving. The final stage of the trials brought the team to a massive, industrial complex filled with towering machinery that hissed and groaned with every movement, and shifting platforms that clanked ominously as they slid into place. Sparks rained down from exposed cables overhead, and jets of steam burst unpredictably from rusted pipes, adding to the chaos. The dim, flickering lights cast long, distorted shadows, creating an atmosphere of tension as the team moved through the labyrinthine structure, each sound a potential sign of danger. The air was thick with the hum of engines and the metallic tang of oil. This stage wasn't just about survival, it was about strategy. "This is it," Lyris said, her voice unusually serious. "No holding back." The team advanced cautiously, navigating the labyrinthine structure. They encountered mechanical adversaries that adapted to their tactics, forcing the team to constantly innovate. Rian's earthborn ingenuity shone as he rigged a trap using loose cables and debris, short-circuiting one of the larger bots. "Nice work," Threx said, their respect evident. "Don't get comfortable yet," Rian replied, his eyes scanning for the next threat. The climax came when the team reached the core of the complex, where a massive, heavily armored mech awaited. It unleashed a barrage of attacks, forcing the team to scatter. Rian's mind raced as he assessed the battlefield. Lyris, draw its fire from above. Threx, find a way to disable its sensors. Crixer, with me, we're going for the legs. The team executed the plan with precision. Lyris darted through the air, narrowly avoiding the mecha's plasma blasts. Threx climbed onto a nearby platform, using their claws to tear into the mecha's sensor array. Meanwhile, Rian and Crixer focused their efforts on destabilizing its legs, targeting weak points in the armor. The mech faltered, its movements growing erratic, each step a heavy, uneven clank that sent vibrations rippling through the platform. Sparks flew wildly from its damaged joints, and a deep, guttural grinding sound echoed as it struggled to remain upright. Seizing the moment, Rian sprinted forward, dodging a sputtering burst of plasma fire. He leapt onto the mecha's back, the heat from its thrumming core radiating against his skin. Gritting his teeth, he plunged a sharp piece of debris into the exposed cables near its neck, severing the connections in a shower of sparks. The mech let out a final, mechanical roar before collapsing in a heap of scorched metal. Its core powering down. The arena dissolved, returning to its neutral state. The crowd erupted into cheers as Professor Vyakal stepped forward, their expression unreadable. "You have done well," they said. "This trial was not just about individual strength, but the strength of your unity. Remember this lesson as you continue to grow." The team stood together, battered but victorious. Rian glanced at his teammates, a sense of camaraderie washing over him. For the first time, he felt not just like a participant but a leader, one who had earned his place among the stars. The Academy's main hall was abuzz with life, a stark contrast to the grueling trials Rian and his team had endured just hours ago. Overhead, holographic banners shimmered in a kaleidoscope of colors, their animated designs flickering with bursts of light that mimicked fireworks. The banners displayed the results of the intergalactic combat trials in bold, glowing letters, scrolling dynamically as if the text itself celebrated the efforts of all participants. Among the names highlighted in glowing letters, Rian's team stood near the top, a sight that sent a wave of disbelief and pride coursing through Rian. His breath caught for a moment as he realized the magnitude of their achievement, the culmination of everything they had fought for. The glowing letters felt like a validation, not just of their teamwork but of his place here, among the best in the galaxy. Position that few had anticipated, and one that filled him with equal parts pride and disbelief. The murmurs of the crowd were a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Did you see how the Earthling handled the mech?" one student whispered, their voice tinged with awe. "I thought his team would fall apart," another replied, shaking their head in disbelief. The hum of chatter swirled around Rian, a tangible reminder of the impression they had left. Whispers about the Earthling who had not only survived but excelled in the trials circulated among the students and faculty. Rian felt the weight of their stares, but this time, it didn't feel isolating. It felt earned. Threx clapped him on the back, their tail flicking with satisfaction. "Not bad for a rookie Deathworlder," they teased, their tone warm. Rian smirked, adjusting his jacket. Not bad for a veteran feline, either. As the formal proceedings began, Professor Viwayakal took the stage, their imposing figure commanding the attention of the hall. The intergalactic combat trials have long been a measure of strength, strategy, and unity. Today, we celebrate not just the victors, but the lessons learned and bonds forged in adversity. Their gaze swept the room, pausing momentarily on Rian and his team. Among you are those who have proven that strength is not measured by origin, but by resolve. Today, we recognize the team whose unity turned challenges into triumphs. They gestured toward Rian's group. Step forward. The hall erupted in applause as Rian, Threx, Crixer, and Lyris approached the stage. Standing under the shimmering lights, Rian felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just a victory for him, it was a validation of everything he'd endured, from Earth's unforgiving environment to the Academy's skeptical gazes. As the applause subsided, Professor Viwayakal addressed them directly. You have shown that adaptability, courage, and trust are the true hallmarks of greatness. Let this moment remind us all of what can be achieved when differences are set aside in pursuit of a common goal. After the ceremony, the team regrouped in the quieter corner of the hall, away from the celebratory crowd. Lyris, uncharacteristically subdued, glanced at Rian. I'll admit, Earthling, you surprised me. Your chaos actually works. High praise, Rian replied, grinning. Coming from you, I'll take it. Crixer clicked their mandibles thoughtfully. It is clear now why your world thrives. Chaos breeds resilience. Threx nodded, their sharp eyes studying Rian. And you've shown us that resilience can be a strength we all share, no matter where we come from. The moment was interrupted by the hum of a holographic communicator, signaling an incoming message. The Academy's crest appeared briefly before a voice spoke. Rian Tate, report to the administrative chamber at once. Rian's brow furrowed. What now? The others exchanged curious glances, but before they could speculate, Rian waved them off. I'll be back. Don't eat all the snacks without me. The administrative chamber was a stark, imposing space, bathed in cold, bluish light that reflected off the polished floors. Its walls were adorned with the symbols of countless intergalactic alliances, each glowing faintly as if alive, their intricate designs hinting at the weight of the decisions made within these walls. The air carried a faint metallic tang, and every sound seemed amplified, emphasizing the formality and gravity of the moment. Seated at a long table were representatives of the Galactic Union, their expressions unreadable. At the center stood Professor Viwayakal. Rian Tate, they began, their voice steady. Your performance in the trials has drawn attention beyond these walls. The Galactic Union has expressed interest in recruiting you for a special initiative, one that requires the unique perspective and adaptability of someone like you. Rian blinked, the weight of the words sinking in. Recruiting me? For what? A dignitary leaned forward, their voice measured. An exploratory mission to uncharted sectors. We need someone who can think on their feet, who can face the unknown with resilience and ingenuity. Your performance has proven that you embody these qualities. The proposition was as thrilling as it was daunting. Rian's mind raced, weighing the opportunity against the risks. He thought of Earth, of the countless stories of survival and ingenuity that had shaped him, and of the team he'd just begun to trust. I'll do it, he said finally, his voice firm. On one condition. The dignitary arched an eyebrow. And that is? Rian squared his shoulders. I want my team with me. We're stronger together. There was a pause, then a faint smile from Professor Viwayakal. A wise choice. As Rian left the chamber, he felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd experienced before. The trials had been just the beginning. Together with his team, he was ready to face the stars, not as an anomaly, but as a force to be reckoned with. Back in the hall, his team greeted him with expectant looks. So? Threx asked, their tail flicking. Rian grinned. Hope you're ready for more chaos, Rian said, his grin widening as he let the suspense hang for a moment. We've got a mission. Threx let out a low, amused chuckle, while Lyris rolled her eyes with a smirk. Crix's mandibles clicked in what could only be described as anticipation. The team's reactions reflected a mix of excitement and resolve, the bond between them palpable. Laughter and groans followed, but beneath it all was a shared excitement. They had found their rhythm, their purpose, and their place. And as they looked ahead, the unknown no longer felt daunting. It felt like an adventure waiting to unfold.